Okay, welcome, Margaret. First, would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Well, hello, my name is Margaret. I'm a 72-year-old Catholic, lay Catholic. I was a cradle Catholic. Both my parents were converts to Catholicism. There are a few sort of things that happened in my life that are relevant to my Dominican journey. So when I was 16, I had an experience of God when I was bathing in the waters in Lourdes on a school trip. And I felt the presence of God. I was full of love and joy and peace and happiness. And I didn't understand what had happened to me. So for the rest of my life, really, I was trying to understand and to know what to do about that experience. My cousin died at the age of 8, and I loved him dearly, and I developed an interest in end-of-life care and an interest in end of life from that moment onwards. And I had an near-death experience when I was in my 20s in India, and I experienced the same thing that I'd experienced in Lourdes, filled with the love of God and quite happy to go, but I survived. So that's the sort of background. Then recently, I've had 3 bizarre accidents. I found my purpose in life. I discerned my purpose in life many years ago, which was to the lost sheep of the house of Israel and to be a house of prayer for the nations. And I was able to live that vocation as a chaplain, hospital chaplain, which meant in later life, I did a university degree in chaplaincy and a master's degree in pastoral theology. And I worked for 7.5 years as a hospital chaplain in mental health and in the local hospital where I was doing end-of-life care. So that's where I was when I had this bizarre accident 5 years ago. Somebody lost control of his car in reverse and came careering towards Sean and myself, who were pedestrians. I was badly injured. I fell and was badly injured. And the last 5 years, I've had 4 operations, and it's been very difficult. But I'm now somewhat disabled and in my right arm and hand. So I can't work as a chaplain anymore. And it was around about this time that I started to discern my Dominican vocation. Do you want to know how that came about?
Well, yeah. I mean, the first question, Margaret, is really what attracted you to the Lay Dominicans?
Yeah. Well, the 2 things attracted me: the people and the charism. When I was doing my master's degree, I traveled up and down to London on the train with a Dominican sister from Crawley, from the Crawley community. And we became great friends because we were doing this for quite a long time. And there was something about her that was very special. She exuded the Lord. You felt like you were in the presence of the Lord when you were with her. She was happy, joyful, peaceful, loving, and very interested in you as a person. And we had some quite interesting things happen to us on the train because she was in her nun's habit, and people were attracted to her, and so was I. And I thought, I want to be like her. And so over those years, she told me about the Lay Dominicans and suggested I might like to come and see. But it was only after I'd had my accident and I couldn't fulfill the vocation I felt that I had in life that I thought, well, is this what the Lord is leading me to? So we started by Zoom calls because it was during lockdown, which suited me because I can't drive anymore because of my disability. So I thought, well, I can do this. So I I then met the lay community on the Zoom and then later in person. And they really were, they had the same kind of charism about them as well. So I decided to begin as an inquirer, which I did for a year. And then I was admitted. So that's the stage I'm at the moment. But I've been admitted for over a year and I've been discerning my call. And something happened recently that confirmed the call for me. And it was in the Magnificat that I do every day, the prayers in the Magnificat. It was the story of Blessed Dina, I've got her name down here, Dina Bélanger, a Canadian lady. And she suffered a lot of ill health. And the Lord spoke to her and he said that her vocation was to write, and that because he'd given her these periods of ill health, this was her opportunity to do so. And that spoke to me very deeply. And St. Catherine of Siena also, she preached by writing. So that was confirmation for me. So, and actually preparing my thoughts for this today has been like a mini retreat for me, looking back on the last sort of 2 years. And I now know that I'm going to go forward now.
Oh, that's really beautiful. Thank you, Margaret. I think you've already started to answer the next question, well, the next 2 questions. So first of all, can you tell me how being a Lay Dominican has impacted your life?
Yes. What I didn't say before is about the Dominican charism, and particularly St. Dominic believed that everyone, lay and religious, should grow in their prayer life and become contemplatives. That appealed to me because ever since I had that experience, which I think was a contemplative experience, actually, I wanted to know what it meant for my life. Nobody could tell me while I went to priests and things. And I knew it was something religious, but I didn't have a structure or a way forward. So I kind of muddled along with my family life. We had 6 children. So life was pretty tied up. There wasn't a lot of time for prayer and all of that sort of thing. But I lived the little way of blessings, which is doing lots of little things in love of God. And that was, and I also discovered praise, charismatic praise. So I would sing while I was doing the housework. I danced to Christian music with my children. But that's how I filled the gap. Being a Lay Dominican, it's given me the opportunity to grow in prayer. And I've learned about, St. Dominic wrote about 9 ways of praying. And all those ways of praying, any of them and all of them, can lead to the contemplative prayer, to the prayer of union and being in the presence of God and his love flowing through you. So I had some kind of a structure, and I associated with lots of those different prayer styles at different times in my life. So that was very important. The other thing for me was ongoing faith formation. I just felt that really as an adult, you know, we don't get a lot of formation to help us to grow in our spiritual lives. And so that was a very key thing for me about the Dominicans. And at our monthly meeting, there's a time for formation. And that's been interesting. But also the Dominican priests and brothers and sisters really love the lay the lay fraternities, and we get the best teaching. You know, we get the best when we have our retreats. We have the teachers coming from the Dominican friaries, and I mean, it's been beautiful. We're getting teaching that we would never get in church. So I think, I've just made a couple of notes here. And the other thing is devotion to Our Lady, increased devotion to Our Lady. This was a blank for me. My parents were converts, and Mary never featured in our Catholic life at home. Plus, I was adopted as a child, and I had this idea that mothers abandon you, which, you know, is something I've had to deal with. So there's a Dominican way of praying the rosary, which I read about, and that is that before each bead, you meditate on some aspect of that particular rosary meditation. And to me, that was the answer for me. Because so I'm actually working my way through. I've done the joyful mysteries. It's taken me a long time. And now I'm just moving on to the sorrowful mysteries. So, it's also study, isn't it, in a way, because where I've got gaps, I'm trying to find out, well, what does this mean? I'm using the internet a lot because I'm stuck in the house a lot, and I can use the internet to listen to podcasts and things. So, I think that's I suppose the importance of study as well. I've just sort of, they're very keen on study, and actually, I've moved into that in the later stages of my life with my chaplaincy degree and my master's degree, and it's given me a thirst. It's also given me a foundation. So, like an example with Thomas Aquinas, I tried to read Thomas Aquinas without any study, and I was just gobbledygook to me. I just couldn't get it at all. Now I can pick up Thomas Aquinas and I can read it and understand it. So the study has helped me to study on my own, because I've got the lingo that goes with it, which actually excludes a lot of people. So, I mean, I just, because I have a lot of time now, I can't peel a potato, Teresa. So Sean has to do all the cooking and cleaning and so on. So I've just given the time to the Lord, and I'm never bored. And he pings things to me on the internet that he thinks I might be interested in. And I think, oh, well, let's have a listen. And there's something there he wants to say to me. So I think that's really important as well.
Oh, okay. Margaret, you've already, I think, answered the next question in a way, but I'll let you choose your own way of answering this one in particular. So with regards to preaching,
yes,
what opportunities do you find in your daily life for preaching?
Well, first of all, when I was working as a hospital chaplain, I was working as a generic chaplain in my local hospital. So I was expected to take ecumenical services, and part of that also went out on local radio. So I had to prepare a reflection for every Sunday one. And I also had to take ecumenical funerals, babies and adults, people who believed but didn't belong anywhere, so they didn't have anybody to take the services for them. And so I thought, well, I have had no training in this, and if you want me to do this, you're just going to have to help me here. And so that's what he did. And I really enjoyed that preaching, because it came from the Lord. About a week or 2 weeks, I'd say, okay, what theme do you want me to talk about? And then I said, well, you better give me what you want me to say. And he always did. And so I really came to enjoy that, and especially preaching at funerals. People are very open. And my whole thing of how I preach in my daily life is to help other people have an experience of the love of God like I had. That's really it. That's how I've lived my life. And I found that praying with people when they were dying, the Lord always came. I would pray for a refreshing or anointing of the baptism of the Holy Spirit in people's lives. And he always came, always came. And it was incredible the reaction it had, because they got it. They had that experience I had when I was dying. They got it and they understood what it was all about. And all my preaching around those times, if you like, teaching, was in the prayer, thanking God for all the times that they had loved in their life, and helping them to understand that was God flowing through them. And that was a real, and they died in peace. And then at the funeral, the same message. I was used to give the same message, and people were open to it. So the opportunities that arise in my daily life now is writing, chiefly. And I can do that. I've learned to use the computer again. And in our fraternity, we have the editor of a new magazine called The Faith Companion, Kathy Bishop. And I had been writing anyway over the years, but never knew what to do with the stuff. And I had a word with Kathy, and she had a look at it, and she's been publishing me.
Wonderful.
And she has the same outlook to receiving articles as I have in writing them, because it's the Lord that's writing through me. It's not me, and I know the difference. So when he wants me to write something, he gives me the words. And so Kathy's been a great blessing to me. And it's given me a new purpose in my life. And of course, St. Catherine of Siena, who I discovered, and I chose her as my Dominican name. That was what she did. She wrote letters, and her mystical experiences with God were written down in a dialogue, and in there's her spiritual journey, and it's one of a life of prayer and virtue, and I want to copy that, really. So
okay,
yeah.
Well, I don't think we'll be surprised by the answer to the next question then, Margaret, which is which Dominican saint do you have the most devotion to, and why?
Well, it's Catherine of Siena. And the interest goes back. We went on a pilgrimage to Lourdes to Rome a few years ago, before I joined the Dominicans. And the first place we went was to this church, and there was her incorrupt body on the altar. So I thought, oh, well, this is interesting. Who is this? So again, through the Magnificat, there was an article about a book that had been written, and it's one it's not one I'm going to recommend specifically, but can you see that? It's St. Catherine of Siena, and it's by Paul Murray, and it was the Dominican motto to praise, to bless, and to preach. Those 3 chapters which spoke to me, because I really think I would have liked Catherine, and I think maybe she's a bit, her personality is probably a bit like mine. I think she was extrovert and very enthusiastic, and she was a lay person in a time when there wasn't a great role for the laity in the church. And she experienced a new way of praising, which was for her to the daily office of the church. But for me, It was, for me, I've experienced a new way of praising through charismatic prayer. And I run a prayer group in my parish. And I mean, I just love that time. And St. Dominic was very keen on the body as being an important part of our spiritual life and using our bodies. And in that prayer group and praising that way, I found a new freedom to praise in the way I want to praise. That's meaningful to me. So that was good. And then to bless. There's a very interesting chapter in that book on how she blessed. But it was very much what I think I described earlier for me, was everybody you meet is an opportunity to love. And that's how you bless them. So my lifestyle, my in-between lifestyle, was a little way of blessings, which I explored. And I used to think, who can I bless today? And I used to keep a notebook of it. And then right at the end of the day, who had I blessed? It's become kind of a bit of a habit, really. And you can bless in extraordinary ways. I was crossing the zebra crossing in town, and there was a lady having trouble getting across. And I asked if she wanted any help. And she said, no, thank you. But when we got to the other side, she pulled up her trouser legs and showed me these enormous legs. And she couldn't walk. So I just said, oh, would you like me to pray for you? And she said, yes. And I just said a little prayer and we said goodbye. So I think, to me, that makes every day a bit exciting. Because you don't know what's coming and how you can bless. And two of the key things about Catherine was her encouragement and her exhortation, if you like. And actually those are charismatic gifts as well. And I think that's been part of my life for a long time, but I didn't sort of recognize it. But I think every time you bless somebody, it's the Lord blessing through you and giving them that experience of love again. That
It's also another way of seeing Jesus in every person that you come across.
Yes, and that was one of the things. Love of neighbor was a big thing for her, because she's loving neighbor, she's loving Jesus. And yes, that's been my way as well.
Okay.
And the lost sheep of the house of Israel. There's so many lost sheep around. I call them my flock. My husband laughs at me. Because in mental health, people needed a lot of encouragement. And that experience of God's love. So, yeah.
Okay. And so finally, Margaret, is which book would you recommend to anyone who's thinking about?
Can you see that?
No, you'll need to lift it up a bit higher. Yes, good.
You got it?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's called How to Pray the Dominican Way, the Postures, Prayers and Practices That Lead Us to God. And it's by Angelo Stagnaro. And it's Paraclete Press 2012. I came across this. I had it in my library here as something I might like to read one day. And this covers everything that somebody, I think, like me, who's discerning, would need to know about the Dominican life. So the first chapter gives a nice little history of St. Dominic, the key things. And then the rest of it is the 9 ways of prayer. And he adds a section, in fact, he calls it the 10 ways. He adds contemplative prayer at the end, because Dominic didn't actually go into that so much. He was leading people to contemplative prayer, but didn't know how to express it. And so there's a really good chapter in here on contemplative prayer. So that was the first thing I read. And that inspired me, because it's given me a structure to follow. It's like having spiritual direction in a book, because I can identify with every part of this at different stages in my life. So yeah, it's a handbook, really. I think every person, and it covers everything concisely.
So it's very, very practical and accessible.
It's very practical. Someone who's been perhaps is either well, certainly for me, while I'm in the second stage in the Dominicans, while I'm discerning.
Okay.
And I would just, if anybody was interested in St. Catherine of Siena, this is an excellent book, and it's a recent publication, St. Catherine of Siena by Paul Murray. So somebody that perhaps thought that might be somebody they'd like to read about, highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. She comes alive in this book. I hear her speaking to me, and she's speaking truth that I know, but I didn't know.
Oh, well, thank you, Margaret. That was really wonderful and an inspiring conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.